Dearest gentle listeners, you are listening to the Ladies Bridgerton, the talk of the town. We are your effervescent hosts, your neighbourhood-friendly Kiwi, Tash from Middle-earth, New Zealand.
And Patty, Regency romance enthusiast, currently writing her high vibe and audacious era.
Settle down onto your favourite settee as we delve into the lives of the elite and illustrious ladies, lords, and royalty of the ton. This Bridgerton podcast is two friends talking romance, symbolism, Easter eggs, and diving into the connections of our favourite characters. We cover both book, TV series, and notable social media, and therefore will contain spoilers.
Tangent Squad, we gave you the brothers breakdown, we mused on the mother, and now we round out the family with the sisters synopsis. We talk sisterly affection, dynamics, and we just may squeeze in how Penelope became a de facto sister, which caused her romance with Colin to take on a slow burn while he filtered through his feels.
Now, do we have any news to cover today?
No, we talked about there was there was a Luke and Nicola sighting at the Vogue after party. Well, they did some things with Vogue for the BAFTAs.
Mm-hmm.
And so they both attended the BAFTAs, and there were, just putting it out there, there were a lot better pictures of Luke and Antonia that some people are still struggling with, but some people are like, oh, they look so cute together. And they really do. But here was my takeaway. This was literally me looking at all the pictures, and there's a Vogue thing, question answer thing. Because Luke and Nicola had to talk about some of their costumes from their season. And Luke's talking about their outfits when they were promenading, his coat, and how he got so much about his character from just when he saw that coat. Like, he just got the idea of how much he traveled and how the travel wasn't posh. And, I mean, I'm putting words in his mouth. He basically just said a million stories came to him with how that coat looked.
I love, and this is one of the reasons why I think that his acting is underrated. He pulls so much from so little.
Much like we do.
And that's
why we admire him so much. He's so analytical. Like, I think there's going to come a time, and I don't think it's right now. I think Bridgerton got him through the door. It got him on that stage where people are starting to notice, but he's going to be a little bit different than Jonathan Bailey, where Jonathan Bailey was like Insta star. You know what I mean? Like, he exploded right now. I think Luke, because he's a little more baby faced.
Jonathan Bailey is super outgoing, very.
Yeah.
I think also his connections of friendships, the connection with Ariana Grande got him a lot of attention at Wimbledon events, and he was in the news a lot because of that, and so I think that got a lot of attention. And then with the Fiyero playing Fiyero, it also garnered a lot.
That's what I'm saying. Like, Bridgerton, his season of Bridgerton brought a bunch of projects all at once.
Yes.
And that didn't quite happen with Luke. But I think with Luke, he's a little bit more private. He doesn't put himself out there like Johnny did.
Yes.
And he also, and he said it, like, they said, what TV show would you be on if you weren't on your TV show? And he chose White Lotus because he found out that when they film White Lotus, they take over a resort and all of the actors stay on this resort. And he goes, I'm down for that. I love a good holiday. So, like, I think that his priorities in life are just a little bit different. I think he will still get recognized, and he will have the opportunity to sink his teeth into characters that are going to surprise people, but it's going to be a little bit later in 40s. I think he's going to peak in his 40s into 50s, like, and he's going to be that man that, like, ages well.
I'm gonna throw out a little bit of judgment here. Antonia is 24 years old. So there's like an 8-year age gap between these two. Wait, no, isn't Luke? He's 32?
Yeah.
31, 32, somewhere around there. So there's like an
32. Yeah. 32 now. He turned 32 in February.
there's an 8 year age gap between them, and I think that he's still very much living his youthful era, and I think that kind of a little bit shows in the girlfriend and the age of the girlfriend that he has chosen. I mean, same as Nicola, a little bit,
Yeah, her man's
she's
like what, 26? She's
yeah.
39,
Yeah. So what I'm saying is like
38,
when
39.
when you're not looking to settle down and have kids and get married and do all those things, it doesn't really matter what age person you're dating in that
I
grand
was
scheme
not
of things
talking
because
personal lives at all because I didn't give a crap about that. I just pointed that out because there are shippers out there
well,
that do.
what I meant more so was that I think you know how you were talking about how he loves a vacation and that's why he chose because I
Yeah.
think he knows that he's aging like a fine wine, so he has that time to be able to play the young boy still. Like I mean, he's
Yeah.
literally
Oh,
playing
yeah.
a 21-year-old boy at the moment, and so more so what I was meaning is even in his real life, he's still playing a much younger man because in Hollywood, people don't age quite like they do in regular life. That makes any sense whatsoever.
Correct. The right.
And I mean, on Nicola's side, I have no idea whether she wants kids or, any of that in the future at all. She's just living her best life and absolutely killing it out there. So go, Nicola, do what you do. Same as Luke,
So,
live your life.
right. So my takeaways, and I'm sending you this picture because it goes into my next thing. So my takeaways from this were the shippers are there. That's gonna come up in arms about these posed pictures of him being affectionate with Antonia. But then like all I cared about, because I mean I think that he's gonna have his heyday in
So
probably about
if you're
10
saying it
years
in
ish.
the white way, it's Antonia. And then if you're saying it in the Greek way, it's Antonia.
Well, I'm not Greek, so
White,
Antonia.
Antonia.
And when I fostered my foster son Tony was trans, and his birth name was Antonia, and he said Antonia, not Antonia. Antonia, but he went by. But the main thing I thought about was the curls mean they're still filming. And look at that picture I sent you. Like he's got two
Um,
girls
uh,
that just kill me,
there was
me
literally
dead, stone dead.
there was an interview 2 weeks back where I believe Nicola said that they were wrapping up filming in the next few weeks.
Well, either they wrapped it up and he kept the curls for this event, but the last time
I
they finished
personally love
filming, he
I
got
love
rid
the
of them.
girls. He did. He went the
Oh,
mullet kind of.
they kill me stone dead, Luke Newton. Stone
Mhm.
dead. There is something about a dark haired man with a little bit of curl. I don't know. I don't know. There just is.
Okay, now I do believe that it is time to make haste into today's episode. And I feel like we actually kept our tangents on Bridgerton content this week. So we're doing.
Except I'm gonna tangent right now, but I saved it for after the make haste because it does fit into the sisters thing.
Mhm.
So I want to manifest this. I saw a video today. Michelle Obama has a podcast. She had Beyonce Knowles' mother on. She got up and danced with Beyonce Knowles' mother. And all I could think watching Michelle Obama looking very regal and radiant is how much she looks like Adjoa Ando and how they need to give Lady Danbury a sister. And now here is what my imagination came up with to make this happen.
They can't because it's already in the law, but yeah.
How is it in the lore? All we know is that she was sold off into marriage at 16. She was groomed they sold her off at 3. When she was 16, she married the man. And she had a brother who found out she was going to run away, and he told the dad, and she didn't get to escape. We don't know if she has a sister or not.
That's true.
A sister, especially if they sell off all of their daughters into marriage for personal gain. I looked up their birthdays. Adjoa Ando is 1 year and 3 days older than Michelle Obama. They're both born in January. One is the 14th, one is the 17th, 1 year apart. They could completely be sisters. And here's my thought process, because it also plays into our other theory. So Lady Danbury gets sold off into marriage and she gets taken at 16, but she had a sister, young, a year younger than her. Her sister was sold off to marry the heir. So the people that bought her, that however that worked. The people that chose her, instead of leaving her with the family, they take her, they bring her to England then, and she is raised by them as their ward with the intent that she is going to marry their son, who's also young. Now, they die off, like he becomes the heir. They have gotten married, but she has not produced an heir before something happens and he passes away. So his sister gets the title, Lady Kent. Remember, Lady Kent is Lady Kent, right? Cold, unfeeling woman. That's what Alice said. I barely knew her, cold, unfeeling woman. So she, because they weren't married very long, like there's probably nothing into, like, she would be staying there at the whim of the now Lady Kent, who doesn't like her, doesn't want her there. So she's going to be pushed out. So she finds Lady Danbury and comes to her like, hey, I'm your sister. This is what happened to me. She verifies it is true. And it answers a problem for her because she's with child with Lord Ledger's baby. So she takes her into the country with Coral, sets her up in an estate, gives, like, this is her story, right? She got money from the estate.
Her origin story.
Like, she got money from the estate, but it's Lady Danbury's money. But she got money from her late husband's estate, but his sister got the title, so she had to set up new housekeeping. She only has one lady's maid, which is Coral, which is really Lady Danbury's lady's maid, but she's going to leave Coral to help her with raise the baby. And because they look so much alike, Lady Danbury goes out and promenades so people can see her belly growing and they assume it's her. And then she has the baby. Her sister takes over as the mother of the baby. And then she goes back home, back to society, and basically only corresponds via letter, doesn't really come to see her, sees her from far away, whatever. Like, we get this whole story. I think it would work. And then Michelle Obama would be on Bridgerton because her and
Adjoa.
I can't talk today. I know how to say it. Adjoa Ando look so much alike right now, and they're so close in age. Like, they're both beautiful women. They both look like they could be sisters, and I think it needs to happen. Like, I think I've created a pretty good storyline there, Jess Brownell, that you created
a whole backstory.
Like, you could flesh it out and make it happen. Michelle Obama, I'm sure you could teach her how to speak with an accent, or hell, make her like she ended up in the Americas. Like, who knows?
No,
something.
Not the Americas.
Hey, the Americas existed, and yeah, like, it's possible. Yeah. Make it happen. Come on, Shonda. Come on, Jessica. Shonda, and I know Shonda Rhimes knows Michelle Obama. Make it so.
I feel like she would, yeah.
No, she's been to the White House, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
When they were in office. Like, do it.
Well, has Shonda Rhimes been to the White House?
Oh. Now Tosh has to look it up. I'm sure. It has to have happened. She can't be that high up in television throughout their entire time in the White House and not have been invited.
Well, I'm presuming this was when Obama was in office, but I don't remember the exact years. Yes, Shonda Rhimes
2008 to 2016. I'm an American. You can ask me.
Yes, Shonda Rhimes has been to the White House. She read to children at the Storytime stage during 2016 White House Easter egg roll.
Mm-hmm. They do the Easter egg thing every year.
And Shondaland also mentioned a White House consultant for her show, The Resident, and that the show in turn is inspired by a book about the White House.
Yeah, so she's been there. They know each other. They know that. They know each other. Do it. Come on, Shonda. I have to see Michelle Obama and Adjoa Ando play sisters.
Okay, let's talk about the actual sisters today, Patty. I'm ready.
Hey, that was a sister story. I think it was pretty good.
Sister.
But yes, let's get into the Bridger sisters.
So, are we going to include Penelope in this connection today, seeing as, or are we just going to focus on our four girls, Francesca?
We'll focus on our four, but we're going to discuss how Penelope got that status, because that plays into my theories I had talked about before that somebody from our group tried to steal and post out on the chats like it was their idea. Mm-hmm. But
I've had that happen so many times.
Right. Like, come on. And that's why we don't listen to other podcasts or anything because we want to know that our ideas are ours and stuff like that. So, not to sound negative
No, no,
about it.
no. I think it's a
But yeah,
positive. I think makes people respect.
I think it makes complete sense how she got familial status. And I do think that it created an obstacle for their romance, especially with the canon of he's loved her just as long as she's loved him. But it created like you go through that period of like, can I? She's like my sister, you know?
But it's
So,
always the girl next door romance. So I mean, so I
yeah.
think today we're going to talk about Daphne, Francesca, Eloise, and Hyacinth to varying degrees, and kind of the order in which they're born, how it affects them, their different personalities, how we each think they're going to take kind of the marriage mart, and the difference is that their partners, like the differences between their partners and the personality differences between them. I think that's probably like a really good starting place for our analysis of the sisters. So I want to kind of start
On
with Daphne.
the pen conversation won't take that long and it can fit at the end, but it's
Yeah,
important to note she is the fifth Bridgerton sister.
she is.
like
Yeah, very
like
much.
canon sister. I'm not saying she married Colin and became a
No,
Bridgerton
she was
wife.
she was
She was
already,
a
yeah.
Bridgerton sister.
She
Yeah.
was an
So,
honorary member before she was married it.
and as we talk about birth order, I think that something that Julia Quinn really focused on birth order when she was writing these books because there were 8 siblings. And I think she did such a great job, a better job with the girls in terms of birth order than with the boys. And here's why. Here's what I'm gonna say. Like, when it came to Gregory, he looked up to, and it may be that the reason like he should have normally in most family dynamics I've seen, if when you have multiple siblings, especially an even number, you usually have like the first and the second clash, but the first and the third are very similar and get along. And then the second and the first clash, the second and the third kind of get along pretty okay, but the second and the fourth are very similar. And we see some antagonism between Eloise and Hyacinth, but they're so similar. They're so intelligent. They're so astute. They're so observant. I mean, Eloise is observant until it has to do with her. So, like, if it has to do with her, she can't see beyond the nose on her face. But she and Hyacinth are so, like, they're the most intelligent of the sisters in terms of that, your base intelligence. I think that
Not
Daphne,
specialized intelligence.
right. I think Daphne's her intelligence lies in
emotional intelligence.
She has very high emotional intelligence because she was a parentified daughter. She's a first daughter. She's a parentified daughter. She became parentified when her mother went into her depression. And she also, because she got most of the training for the marriage mart, because her marriage mattered the most, who she married affected her sisters. So she had a great responsibility thrust upon her at a very young age. They probably started instilling this in her at like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, as she's starting to get piano lessons, starting all that stuff, that, it's very important for you to learn this. It's very important for you to do this. Who you marry affects who your sisters get to marry. So, she had added responsibility at a very young age, much like Anthony. And that's why they are, even though they're so far apart in age, they almost come off as peers when they're in the same room together. Like, you never think in season 2, when she's talking to him about Kate and having that sister brother moment, you never think that she's 6, 7 years younger than, close to 8 years younger than him. They come off very similar in age because they had very similar responsibilities. And then Daphne and Eloise, being stair steps, like a year apart, they're very different in what they're intelligent about and how they approach it, that they clash a lot. Like, they're close, but they clash a lot. I actually equate, even though I'm the oldest, I equate Daphne and Eloise to like my sister and I, how we are. Although the order of age is different. I'm old, she is. But she's very much more street smart. She's more socially smart. We'll say socially smart in terms of, getting the things she needs and out of life where I'm more socially awkward, but I'm that analytical, book smart. I was called book smart all the time as a kid. In fact, and I quote, my mom would always say, she is so book smart. She doesn't have the sense God gave a goose to get out of the rain. She doesn't know to come in out of the rain. Would always. So I was like super smart, but no common sense. My family and my sister had common sense in spades, but she struggled with the.
So you just
And
brought
then
up
Francesca is isolated and takes to herself. She's super smart. She's got the musical savantism, but it's kind of a she's equally, I think she has kind of the same relationship with each of her siblings. And I'm really excited to see her and Eloise develop their relationship because, and I think they've always had a little bit closer one because they're also stair steps, but mostly she's like, Eloise, you're cool through letters, but I don't necessarily want close. But that's just how Francesca is. She's very isolated. So that's my synopsis.
Something that you said before kind of triggered a thought in me. So I've just looked it up as to whether siblings all had the same dowry or whether it differed from sibling to sibling. Like you would, because I was thinking about why is it that the oldest daughter has the most pressure on her? Like I know that you were only supposed to put one daughter on the marriage mart at a time. So it kind of makes sense that you're under pressure to get them married well so that you can then marry off the other children. But let's just say you had, three daughters on the marriage mart like Portia, and therefore any one of them could be married off first, and then therefore sibling order wouldn't necessarily matter. But it does definitely seem as if in society, being a firstborn daughter gives you higher stock in the value of the ton, which is kind of odd because it makes no difference because you're not inheriting anything more because you're not a male, you're not inheriting title or anything. So it's a little bit confusing as to why it matters. But then I wondered whether a firstborn daughter, they put more into their education, a higher dowry, and whether dowries differed between children. But apparently it really depends on the culture. And I was just looking it up, and sometimes actually.
Well, it depends on the estate and how it's written, but also when you have a family of multiple daughters, you want your firstborn daughter. Most parents want their firstborn daughter to be beautiful or smart, able to be accomplished and whatnot, or both would be the best because that firstborn daughter, like whatever their dowry is, once they marry, if they like Daphne married a duke, okay? Duke is very high up in esteem and title. So now Eloise, if Eloise was playing the game, Eloise could go out there and she would get suitors because not only are they looking at, okay, she did so well, so her sister must also be as accomplished, also be as smart, also be as poised. But we also will have a brother-in-law who's a duke, so we can get things like everything's a business arrangement back then.
Apparently, Daphne's. I'm just looking on Reddit here, so take this with a grain of salt. But it is saying that because Daphne was the sister of a viscount, and obviously people are using these marriages to gain power, and the more elite you align yourself with, obviously the more power you have when you've got, hey, I want to buy this, or I have this problem and I need it to go away, I need this law changed, and the more people you align yourself with. So Daphne actually had remember how we were talking about the $10,000 dowries and how that seemed like a really ridiculous amount, and how Portia was saying, oh, she has a, four-figure dowry or whatever. Apparently Daphne's was £60,000, and a dowry from the 1100s onwards, a dowry was determined by roughly the amount that a daughter would inherit had the dad died and she was still single. That is how much a dowry is supposed to be.
If they were written into the estate at all.
Yes.
So, because if Mr. Bennett had died, we know the Bennetts would have been turned out and destitute because everything was entailed to a male heir and the women got nothing. So the daughters had very little dowries and he actually would negotiate them. That's why there was the negotiation of £100 per annum for Wicca. But yes, I honestly think with what we know about the Bridgertons, what we know about Edmund, what we know about what we know about Edmund, if he would have changed the paperwork at all. But considering Billy and how Billy was, her dad was pretty progressive as well. So I think the Bridgerton women were always written into the estate. And they all married very well too, that generation. So I mean, marrying into the Bridgerton family, aligning with the Bridgerton family was huge, huge. And then Daphne not only is sister of a Viscount, but then she's wife of a Duke. So we should have seen way more people. We should have seen way more people going after Eloise than we did.
Well, yes, and like because obviously like a £60,000 dowry is just insane. Whereas in the same article it says that just I don't know, you're gonna have to knock on the article.
He calls her Lala.
Yeah, I just can't pronounce it.
It sounds right, but I know it's yeah, but he says Lala.
Yeah, sorry, we just had a brief intermittence. My little boy just got home and he's been very, very needy lately. As you can probably hear, he's sick again.
Yep. The joys and there's so much transition.
There's so much transition that he's struggling a wee bit at the moment with it all and really wanting some mummy time because he went from having me 24/7 to seeing me like in his waking hours, like an hour a day, which is a traumatic difference, you know.
For him or mama?
Both.
Yeah.
Because I feel guilty. Like, obviously, I've got such little time in my day at the moment for anything. Like, it's just pack, clean. Like, all the appointments, work calls, you know, it's just a bit chaotic at the moment. But I enjoy myself a little bit of chaos. It makes life more interesting.
Yeah. There's dopamine in chaos.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. And ironically, I do actually sleep a lot better when it's chaotic because I get to the end of the day and I'm just exhausted out. Yeah. So I'm actually going to sleep by like 11:30 at night, which, you know, is a miracle.
Right.
Routine. Wow.
I haven't been going to sleep at 11:30, but I've been falling out pretty much like 1:30 to 2 every night.
Which is still good by your standard.
Way good for my normal.
Yeah.
And I haven't been in the last couple days because hormones, but
yeah. So I do find it quite interesting.
Did you put it back on unpause? Just making sure.
Yeah. I do find it quite interesting though that Eloise's is only £5,000 to £10,000. I'm like, dude, you need to increase that dowry a lot for someone to take that girl on.
But they're not thinking about the dynamic of Eloise. When they created the dowries, they were thinking of the first daughter is going to get married well because she's going to get a huge dowry. But we also know, and I think Shondaland should also use this. The Duke didn't want her dowry.
Yes.
He had it put in trust for her. Yeah. So she's got £60,000 just chilling somewhere that she can use however she wants. And they took her off show. Like, do you know what that could have done? Well, she could have ended up getting Benedict in art school. And I don't think he would have been emasculated by Daphne doing it.
And not to mention that, well, I don't think she would have because that money was being set aside, especially for Augie. And people like girls, like she wanted to make sure that the girls, she was a feminist in her own right. She wanted to make sure that the girls were actually being taken care of instead of constantly
and I think she used some of it to facilitate Marina's communication to find out about George and stuff like that because she was doing that all herself.
Yeah. So quite interesting.
But £60,000 back then was millions.
Well, yeah, because I was going to say, because keep in mind that when Cressida's talking about getting the Lady Whistledown money, she's like, you know, that's enough to live a quiet little country lifestyle for the rest of my life, and that was a tenth of that amount.
Well, and we calculated it the one time when we talked about
it to be millions.
In the book, she had £13,000, and that was what, $3-4 million.
It was a lot. Pounds, not dollars, pounds.
But I mean, you know, like in today's standards, she was a millionaire.
Yes, wealthy.
And this is 60,000. Like, it's a lot. And I think the reason that they do that, because the firstborn daughter, if she marries and any of the daughters end up spinsters, because the more daughters you have, the more likely you're going to end up having at least one spinster. The family is required back then. They're not now. Like in modern times, if you're a single woman, you just get booted. But back then, if there was a spinster daughter, she would be housed with usually the older daughter because they're sisters, or she would be placed, like if she does marry, but she doesn't marry as well, like in Mansfield Park, the eldest sister married really well. She married a titled gentleman. The others, well, and I don't know their actual order of age, but one daughter married very well to the lord who owned Mansfield Park. I cannot think of what his title was right now to save my life. But her sister married a second son who was a vicar, and they ended up giving her husband the living on their estate to be the minister of the church. But then he passed away, and she moved into the main house so that they could get another vicar. So she's now living in the main house with them. So that's what happens with a unmarried sister.
Okay.
The sister who's the most well off, which in this case would be Daphne, would be expected to house them. Now Anthony could also house them, and he's got plenty of money to do it, but they would never be set up in their own home because shenanigans could occur. I mean, look at Tilly. Shenanigans could occur, and that could destroy the reputation of the whole family. So they get housed with a family, and they get taken care of because they can't work. They can't make their own money. And you don't want to, it's not, there's a specific word that they used for women who were turned out of their families and had to become working women. And I can't with that now either, but that you just didn't like, that was poor form to do that to a family. So
you know how,
and that's why Eloise in the books was always so cool with being a spinster, and why she was like, I'll be the spinster daughter because I don't want to get married. Boys are stupid. They have cooties. I want to be smart. I want to do my own thing, and I'll just live with my sister.
Just
and her real plan was
just give me a library and I'm good.
Like she had, I think Eloise's plans in the books was that her mother was going to live a long time, and she was going to live with her mother, and eventually Eloise was going to be a spinster, and the two of them would get an apartment together. So I think she thought that her brothers would allow her and Penelope to live together as companions in their own apartment together. And that's why their spinster storyline lasted as long as.
So I think, I think very much like if I was back in the times and as kind of outspoken as Eloise, I think that being the spinster, probably.
Oh yeah. I would be considered like, I would be like, yeah, I'm not.
Penelope, how dare you abandon me to my spinsterhood?
But I can't wait for the scene. I cannot wait for the scene when Eloise does get married and they're like, we're going to be two old married cronies together. Like, we're going to be two old hens.
Speaking of, do you think, okay, talking about a sibling dynamic that we don't typically talk of very often is Eloise and Daphne. And Eloise and Francesca. I was actually pretty blown away when Eloise concocted this plan and just kind of thrust the idea upon Francesca. Didn't she ask John before? Or she just kind of decided I'm coming with you? It was like, I love it.
No, she had come up with the idea and she asked Francesca first. Francesca's like, I don't know what to say. Like, but she liked the idea because she was, I think, and I'm basing this all off of micro expressions and facial expressions. So I'm completely making up the script here. Take me with a grain of salt. It's what I do. I have a big imagination. So I feel like Francesca was like, whoa, I don't know if I can't handle Eloise in big portion, right? Because she had told her mother, I want to go to Scotland. I want to be in the quiet.
She nearly escaped everyone. And then they come with her and she's like,
But that's Eloise is the third wheel. Like, that is just what she is. And she's like, but I don't like being the third wheel. I don't like how that feels with Colin and Penelope because I'm so close to both of them and that's like weird right now. So I'm going to go be a third wheel with a couple I'm not that close with.
Giving them their space.
Yeah. I think she was giving them their space, but I also think she was like still like her and Penn were making up, but repair is not overnight.
And it's not linear.
I think there's still some awkwardness there. And I think for Eloise to really feel like she's on the same plane as Penelope at this point, but she doesn't want to get married. I think she feels like she needs to have adventure and she needs to have life experience. So if Penelope is going to go down the road of marriage and have wife experience, she needs to go out and have adventure and have life experience. And then they can still be on the same playing field. So, but I think that she's always had, of all the siblings, Eloise has been the closest to Francesca because Francesca was easy because Francesca isolated herself. So Eloise could always just have her opinions, have her ideas and whatever. Francesca never really challenged her on them. I mean,
you know what it is?
Daphne,
I think Eloise just spoke.
condescended.
Eloise just spoke and Francesca just listened. Yeah. Yes, dear. Anything like, you say, dear.
Yeah. You, boo. Like, I'm going to play my piano over here, or I'm going to sit here and be quiet. You can do all the talking. And I think that's what their relationship is. Eloise was the talker. Francesca just sat there. Eloise assumed she was
But
listening,
you know
and
what?
it created
Hmm?
a false closeness.
I think that it is actually that Francesca really appreciates Eloise because she doesn't expect a response. She can do 99% of the lifting, and Francesca just has to give the occasional head nod,
as
yes,
someone in
no.
a very similar dynamic, yes, that is exactly how it is. A
Hmm.
really talkative person does well in a relationship, any kind of relationship, with a really quiet person. When you have somebody that talks a mile a minute, and the other person is like, yes, you talk, it's fine, you talk, I'll listen, you talk, I'll listen, I will contribute a little bit here and there, but you do a major part of
Stephen
this
hates
communication.
going to see his grandparents or talking to his grandparents on the phone without me because they're really close. But
Mm-hmm.
he's like, I need you to lead the conversations. And when you don't, he's like, we just sit in awkward silence together. And I'm like, yes, that is because I am the wealth of conversation topics.
Well, and I saved a TikTok, just one screen of a TikTok. It was a few things that were, but it said that talkative women have the best relationships with quiet men.
That's the
like,
truth.
like yes. But in terms of this sistership, I think that it works. Their relationship, out of all the sisters, I think theirs is the closest relationship. I think it's kind of a false closeness, because I don't think if something
It's only
happened to
one-sided,
Eloise,
really.
well, on both sides, though. Francesca got what she needed out of Eloise because she could be quiet and not be expected to speak. Eloise got what she needed out of Francesca because she gets
Hmm.
to speak and expound on her ideas and soapbox all day long, and she doesn't have a naysayer. She doesn't have
Yeah.
somebody condescending and rolling their eyes like Daphne does, like, oh my God, you're going to have to get married someday, Eloise. And then Hyacinth, I think, is enough younger than them that nobody's really taking her seriously. I think in season 4, we are seeing Eloise kind of align with
I
her a little bit more
really,
based
really
on
want
pictures.
I really, really want Daphne back for Francesca's, sorry, for Hyacinth's season because I think Hyacinth is going to go into this like a bull in a china shop and is going to be so excited and then realize that, hey, actually, it takes a lot of navigating. And if we had Daphne come in and because Francesca never really navigated it, she just kind of like hid from most of it and didn't really play the game.
Fran-
Eloise has got no interest in the game.
Francesca was too young in Daphne's season to be
Yeah,
in the drawing room, to be
yeah.
part of that whole thing. She was separated from it. They still were with a governess. They were with a
Mm.
nanny in the children's quarters. So Eloise's season, which was season
But the
2,
ironic thing is she was the age that Hyacinth is now. But the difference is, I think Hyacinth is more mature than what Francesca was, or at least more vocal, and so her mum is allowing her into that scene earlier than she did Francesca.
well, what I'm saying, the Francesca was in the drawing room. Francesca was playing the piano a lot when things were going on at that age. And Hyacinth is now at that age, and she's in the drawing room, but she's not seeing the best navigators of the ton. Daphne wrote the book.
The
Remember,
Queen,
her and Simon
yeah.
wrote the book together. Eloise is trying to avoid it at all costs, and Francesca is just trying to have it happen to her to get it over with.
Very
So
much.
Hyacinth is not getting the best education right now. And I think Kate will be a big help, because Kate knew the ton, but in a different way, more business like older sister trying to marry someone off. I think she'll be really good for Hyacinth if they can't figure out a way to bring
And I
Daphne
think
back.
because she'll be less attached than she'll be more detached than what she was with Edwina, where there was so
Right.
much pressure on her shoulders. Whereas this time, I think Kate will be able to navigate it a lot more smoothly. Because I actually don't think she was bad at it when it
Because
wasn't
no, she
Anthony.
wasn't bad at it, but there was pressure of, if she doesn't get Edwina to marry well, Edwina, because her whole thing was about Edwina, not her. Edwina loses out on the Sheffield inheritance. They were going to leave her their money if she married an Englishman and if she married well. And so
Well, no,
Hyacinth doesn't have that. Hyacinth,
most of the missteps that she took was to do with Anthony. That was because he didn't want to marry Edwina for love, and because she had that attraction with Anthony going.
those were the missteps she made personally. But I think she had a lot of pressure and she made a lot of quick decisions. Like, Antony would have solved all her problems with the Sheffields, but she didn't want it to be Antony because I think she didn't want her sister to realize 10 years down the road, holy crap, my husband loves my sister. And Kate knew that would happen. Like she was going to remain a spinster. There's only one man for her. Well, I mean, she was planning on being a spinster anyway, but here we are talking about this sister dynamic now. But sister, that's from Chris knew that a lot because I wanted to do the sister theme song too. Sister. But I think that she wanted so much for Edwina. That's the reason she didn't want it to be Antony, because Kate thinks she's a future thinker.
Mm-hmm.
And she can kind of see, because of how highly intelligent she is, she can see outcome of different scenarios. And I think she saw that outcome of Edwina, like how Edwina realized it at the wedding. She knew that realization was going to come someday. Mm-hmm. I just think she assumed it was going to be years down the road. And she didn't want that for her at any age, at any time. But the pressure of the Sheffield's money was a big reason of why she made a lot of missteps that she made, because she needed Edwina. And that's the whole reason Antony ended up being in that spot, because he fit the bill. And if she was really looking for Edwina to find love and not focus on the money, I think things would have turned out differently. You know, if she would have focused more on Edwina finding love, but instead she got Edwina's hopes built up. Like, we did all this training. We finished you off in such a way you can get this type of man. So that's what Edwina was going for. So I think that Kate will be removed because there's no pressure of money. Hyacinth has her own dowry.
Yeah.
But at that point, Kate will probably also practice with Hyacinth, because by the time, you know, Hyacinth has,
well, I wonder if it's going to go
4 years.
I wonder if it's going to go the same as in the books, where Antony has actually increased Hyacinth's dowry because she is as
that's gotta happen. That's so funny.
I loved it.
No, and what would be even better, tell me if this would not be so funny, because it's, you know, how Shonda kind of makes modern day themes in there. You know, how we have business negotiations now where you see that person like think they're losing out. They're losing out. And so they offer more and offer more when really they have the upper hand. Like Gregory. Gareth really wants her. He really wants to propose to her, and he thinks he's coming in there and he has to win Antony's approval, but they're misunderstanding each other. And Antony thinks like, this is my only chance to finally get her married off. So he, in that conversation in the study, he's increasing the dowry as they're talking. I think that would be hilarious.
Just 10 grand, 10 pounds, 10,000 pounds, take
12,000 pounds,
15,000, 20,000. My final offer, please take her. Okay, fine, 30.
That was so fun. That would be so funny. Like every time Gareth opens his mouth to say something about how he wants to marry her, Antony thinks he's like trying to talk himself out of it. And he's like, no. I really can do 18,000 pounds. I can do 18,000 right now.
Going once,
so great.
Twice.
That would be amazing.
I think that
Hyacinth, and then Hyacinth would be like, I mean, Antony would probably turn it into a joke. Like, I had to auction you off. And Gareth was like, he had me at 7,000 pounds. He just know it. And Hyacinth is like, good job, dude.
And then Antony's like, what do you mean 7,000? Yeah. I gave you 20.
Yeah, no, I think like Hyacinth, that is what Hyacinth would be like. You really are my person.
Yeah. The ability to swindle more money out of her siblings, like that is 101 on how to turn Hyacinth on.
Yeah, because you got to have the whole thing where she takes the money from Colin to not tell anybody, but she tells anyway, and it's going to have to be Kate because Eloise already knows.
Well, she tells Eloise in order to get more money out of Eloise.
Yeah, like she's playing them against each other. So it's got to be Antony and Kate who went off. Like Colin gives her money to shut up, but she gets money out of them to tell, and so she has made all the money.
I think, like, I'm not entirely sure on what the culture was like back then, but of what I know of Indian women now, like they are very proud, very like strong, independent, kind of not independent. You know what I mean? Like the Indian women I know are not meek characters. They are strong-willed women, and they are fierce mama bears. And I can imagine that she is going to come back and hear the news about Penelope, and I think she is going to be like, go girl. Like very
I
much
do
kind
too.
of Lady Danbury's kind of reaction to it of,
Well,
I'm so proud of you. Like thank you for doing this
and I
for women.
personally think she already knows because of her look at the wedding breakfast. Like Lady Danbury looks and Kate looks, and they put those next to each other for a reason. So I think Kate has figured it out. I think she figured it out before Colin spoke to her, and he might have confirmed it with that conversation the night before the wedding. And so I think that confirmed it. Like he found out something about Penelope that like shifts everything. And she's like, does it really though? But I think she kind of knew, and she knew Anthony couldn't know because she was like, we're not going to make him say what it is, right? She deflects all of that because it's still before the wedding and they're not married. And I think she was worried that Anthony would be like, nope, can't do it.
I'm very curious as to what Anthony's reaction is going to be. And then Kate being like, sit down, sit.
Right. No, she'll be like, boop. She'll boop him on his nose like she does. She'll be like, it's.
I think he's
When
going to
has
turn
she
it.
ever said anything?
I think he's gonna turn into an absolute softie as a dad.
I agree. I think he's
I
close to softy
100
now, and he's not even a dad yet.
I have 100% feel like he is going to have a daughter, like, and that's going to soften him, so much
He
more.
needs to have a daughter first. That has to play into my canon. I want Colin to have something over him for a little bit, but then he can have a son next, and then everything works out. I need Colin to rub it in his
Well,
face
and
just a
especially
little
because
bit.
it's been a first son of a first son of a first son for X amount of generations. And I think that it just needs to chill out and stop putting so much pressure on that one lineage and just like give them a daughter first.
Yeah. But I think that talking about Eloise, as we swing back to that, talking about Eloise and Francesca's relationship and why that worked, that also explains why Penelope had to come in and become a de facto Bridgerton. Because for our ride or die tangent squad podcast listeners, they will remember months ago in July where I did up a whole
I love how you're like months ago,
pictographic.
as if it wasn't 10 months ago.
It was still months ago. If it's more than two, that's an S, months. So, but last July, and if you want to get technical, I could round up and say almost a year ago. But last July, I did a pictogram. I have it on, no, I never put it on TikTok, but I put it in our group. And it was about how Penelope became part of the family. Because that does happen where a friend of one of the siblings becomes so enmeshed in the family that they do become like,
Well, and we were
they
talking
start to be considered as family.
and
And
we were
sometimes
talking
they'll
about
move in with the family.
Well, that's what I was going to say. We have talked about how when scandal befalls a family, sometimes they'll send their daughter off to a close family friend, and which it was really surprising that they didn't do that with Penelope to go to Eloise's when all that scandal went down. But I suppose it's kind of a bit difficult because the scandal involved both families.
Well, and they were showing like a lot of families do that. Like the alignment hurts, right? And like Eloise still, like she pulled her aside at the Queen's garden party, but then they had to leave. And I think that told them they couldn't see each other. And then that's why Eloise doesn't go to see her when she was scandalized and not
Yeah.
realizing she was whistled
Yeah.
down, because she even said Penelope does not want me over there. Like it's
It would
she's
it would
a
tarnish
pariah.
Penelope. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. And so that could have happened. But the thing is, and most people don't acknowledge it. We understand it because of knowing what we know about Regency, from, all of the reading we've done and research we've done and everything, that the Featherington did not do themselves favors. And it would look weird considering there was no familial alignment at the time for Penelope to just up and start living with the Bridgertons. That would actually be frowned upon. It would be looked at like, especially with how many brothers there were. And the whole ton just
And it's
thought
not like she's
Colin and
really
Penelope were a
distancing.
done deal anyway.
That's not like that's really distancing yourself when you literally live across the way.
Right. And I think that the ton for so long thought that Penelope and Colin were a done deal, like they had a secret engagement. And that's why secret engagement was a theme with Francesca and John. Like the ton,
Ooh.
if you even if you look at how Fife navigates things and figures things out, like Penelope or Nicola says that Fife hates Penelope. But I honestly think that, like, you know, Fife probably wants Penelope. Penelope's pretty voluptuous, but he also has those tendencies. But like, I think there's something more there that created a jealousy for the Bridgertons, which everybody has a jealousy for the Bridgertons, but Fife takes it even further than Lady Cowper does. Like, he's so devious and he just wants them all to hurt. And he wants Colin and Penelope to fail. Like that whole woman of the night thing at the club thing. So, but I think that everybody just assumed they were in a secret engagement since they were children, and that's why a lot of things happened the way it did. But ultimately, talking about her becoming a family member, my pictogram was Daphne and Antony aligned because of being the first. They both had similar responsibilities. They both had things they had to do for the family name and education that they had to go through together. And then Benedict and Eloise were like the rebels. They didn't want to do the thing they're expected to do. Eloise was a female, but she wanted to be able to be educated. She wanted to be able to go off to school. She wanted to be able to hold some sort of employment. Like, she wanted to be able to do anything a man could do, and she couldn't. And Benedict did not want to be a second son. He did not want to be the Lord. He did not want to have to be the second if something should happen to Anthony, because then he's always thinking about Anthony could die. What if Anthony dies? All that. And it's just too much added pressure and responsibility. So they align with each other. And then Gregory and Hyacinth, as the youngest, they align with each other. So Francesca and Colin should align with each other, but Francesca is so isolated and so introverted. Colin really doesn't have a mirror sibling. He doesn't have that partner in crime sibling. So when Eloise and Penelope became friends, he adopted Penelope. Then the whole family adopted Penelope. Well, so it wasn't Eloise that adopted Penelope. Eloise and her being friends brought her into the home. I think where Penelope's relationship to the family started changing was when Violet saw that Colin needed Penelope, because he didn't have a sibling that he was gaining a close relationship with, to have that confidant kind of person, to have that person that he could be truly, totally himself with. She recognized his sensitivity. She knew, like, basically knew he needed a sister alignment. Like, all of them had a sister alignment but him, because Francesca was so introverted. And I think that Violet encouraged it, and Penelope became a de facto for that reason, because Colin needed a sister that he aligned with, and he didn't have one. So Violet adopted another child for him. Like, Penelope can be here whenever she wants.
So I thought about, the tangent was about 5 minutes ago, so hopefully people remember the part where you said this. But I think another reason why Eloise did not go and, why Penelope did not go and stay with Eloise is also for the fact that in season 1 was when Archibald was having, Featherington was having his massive gambling debt. And, especially after he had died, that would have made a whole lot of sense for Penelope to go and stay with her then, because then they'd say, oh, she's mourning with her friend while her mum sorts out the estate or whatever. But
and a lot of people, if they didn't have access to all the money, they would send their kids out.
Well, the reason that Portia would never ever allow Penelope to go over to the Bridgerton house is because people would then possibly gossip about their family as to, oh, she doesn't have enough money to care for her children right now. He did gamble all their money away, and it would just feed the rumor mill, and that would make Portia look bad. And therefore, even if it was the best thing for her daughter at the time, she would never allow such a thing to occur.
Well, and what I'm saying too is, like, she couldn't give up all of her daughters. She could do one of two things in that moment. She could place all of her daughters out so that they would have a chance because she doesn't have access to the money, or she could keep them all and make them all suffer this poverty. And she chose to keep them all. She couldn't let just Penelope go, because if she let Penelope go, then, that says a lot. Keeping 2 daughters and placing only one out, that would completely ruin Penelope for any chance because her own family didn't even, like, if you look at it from a financial standpoint, if she would have let Penelope go and not the other 2 sisters over finances, she's saying she favors those other 2 sisters, like, openly.
Oh, no, I meant, like, because the scandal, as in, like, a scandal occurred, okay, you sometimes send your daughters out, but because the scandal was occurring also surrounding Archibald's gambling and death and suspicious circumstances of death and everything, that because those 2 things occurred at the same time, that they would not be able to, Portia would not send Penelope out because how it would look upon their family.
Well, the thing is, I mean, regardless, as the female, she doesn't have access to the money. They kept saying they needed the Lord to show up so that they could have money again,
Hmm.
right? But I think her issue with placing Penelope out is the fact that it would be in the Bridgerton house. And
Yeah. Yeah.
not knowing who Lady Whistledown is, who do you think, until she found out it was her daughter, Portia thought it was somebody in Bridgerton house
Hmm.
because the Bridgertons were always spoken about favorably
And didn't want
normally.
her gossip going to Lady Whistledown, her
Right.
information.
So yeah, you definitely were on the right track.
Well, even
Like
and the
that's the
third
last house. That's
and
the
the
last now.
and then there's the third point of the fact that Portia was just always jealous of Violet and the place that she held in society and how much more untouchable the Bridgertons were than the Featheringtons. So I think there's also that jealousy aspect of it too.
Honestly, her least favorite child, her most, and I'm glad she healed and we didn't see this. But Penelope is the child that she scapegoated, I think, because Penelope reminded her so much of herself
Hmm.
that she believed Penelope was not going to have the right kind of prospects, or selfishly she wanted to keep her for herself, like you're going to stay a spinster to stay living with me because you're the one that can hold a conversation.
Hmm.
But can you imagine how she would feel if Penelope, her most overlooked and in her mind at the time, like least favorite daughter, got to live in the lap of luxury of Bridgerton House? Like she just couldn't handle that at that time. She was not emotionally mature enough to do that. She was
Yeah.
not going to give her daughter something she really wanted. Like she wanted to align with the Bridgertons because it would raise their stock price and it would help Lord Featherington grow their estate and they'd have more money.
Yeah.
And they'd be aligning with Bridgerton money because she's trying to get Bridgerton money all the time. Even though Penelope has the money to pay Cressida, she's still trying to get Colin to pay it.
Yes.
Like, don't, Penelope's money's mine. Don't you dare touch that money. You use your money, you billionaire.
That's her nest egg. Yeah.
Right?
And that's the, I mean, I don't want to talk about it today because we'll talk about it when we get up to that episode. And we weren't even really going to focus much on Penelope this episode, but it sort of just eventuated that way. But going back to if we're looking at Daphne as how she has set up the way forward for the siblings, it's quite interesting because I mean Francesca I think is a little bit of an outlier because obviously she did very well for herself and Earl is suddenly like nothing to turn your nose up at, but obviously she could have had a Marquis, which is substantially higher, but all the siblings do actually marry. I mean, Hyacinth, I believe she marries into the least amount of, not necessarily, I don't remember his title, but I
Was he a
remember,
baron?
I don't remember, but I just know that his dad had basically mishandled the finances for so many years that they were like massively in debt. So even inheriting it, his
So they
dad,
lived off her dowry mainly.
so his dad knew that he was going to inherit it. I can't remember. I'm gonna give away too much story as to why he did this and why he was punishing his son, but I do
We
remember.
said spoiler trope.
Okay, well, I can't remember if the dad. I'm pretty sure the dad knew that Gareth wasn't actually Gareth. It wasn't actually his son. He was the son of his brother, his older brother who had died. So therefore he was still the rightful heir of the title, but because that was his wife's love child to another man, even though he's still his nephew, the dad could never disown him as his son without bringing scandal upon himself as well. So instead, he decided to basically bury the title into the ground so that he would inherit his mess. So he did everything in his power to basically ruin the title and the land so that when Garrett would inherit it, it was a problem to inherit it. He inherited debt, not money or wealth.
Wow. So you know what that makes me think of? My pattern-seeking brain. Julia Quinn bookended her whole series.
Mm-hmm.
Simon was the son who wanted to thwart his dad, who was punishing his dad by not continuing the line, by not, like, he didn't want to run the title into the ground or anything like that, but he was punishing his dad by not continuing it. And to have all of their estate be entailed out to some who knows whoever, right?
Yeah.
It was going to end with him. And then in, now granted, Hyacinth's book is not really the end, but she's the end child.
Yeah.
she ends up marrying somebody who has that opposite dynamic. Instead of the
Yes.
son thwarting the father's thwarting the
The
son.
son. Yeah. But not actually the son, the nephew, but still.
Right. Family. He was
Yeah.
raised as his son because of appearances. So,
Yes, and Gareth never knew until after his dad had died, who his true parenthood was, and it was because of Hyacinth who actually helped uncover that truth. And I think it actually made him feel better, in the long run about it, because then he knew that why his father hated him, not just because with Simon, Simon's dad hated him because of way more pathetic reasons.
I just had a funny thought too as we talk about the whole study scene, Gareth and Antony.
But I mean,
And
Gareth,
like
Gareth,
Antony increasing the dowry in that moment. And
mhm.
like as it gets discussed later, like Antony's assuming that he was manipulated by Gareth, even though as in true Anthony form, he never lets Gareth speak. He just
Yeah.
keeps increasing the dowry, thinking Gareth is trying to do this, but he thinks Gareth is doing this because he knows Gareth's father, quote unquote father, ruined the estate and ran it into the ground. So Gareth is trying to use the fact that Hyacinth is so difficult to get more money and so Antony kind of upped it to be kind, to be nice, so that they could have a good life together or whatever. And Hyacinth could live how she's used to living. And then
Mhm.
Hyacinth is like, what? Like she's about to get mad. And Gareth goes, no, that's not what happened at all. I went in there to tell him I loved you and I wanted to marry you. And I don't care about no dowry or anything like that. And she goes, and he just upped it. Sweet. And then Anthony feels like all dumb.
Yeah, well, I mean, and then they also eventually, much, much, much down the line, finally find the money that the mum had hidden for
Yeah.
him many, many moons ago.
Yeah,
Her
right
grandma.
when their kids are about to hit the marriage mart and are
Which
going to
is,
need dowries, they find this treasure.
yes, it's very opportune timing.
So do we want to take a little time and
Well,
discuss
let's
the
discuss.
Featherington sisters at all?
No, not today. No, that's way too much in one
I mean, it
episode.
was a sister.
Well, because
This is a sister. I mean, we could do a quick like birth order kind of thing.
well, no, because I still have more that I want to discuss on the Bridgertons. Like, so now that we're talking about,
What? Did you actually take notes?
no, I just have mental notes.
Oh, I was about to be like, how did you even have time? The whole
I
point of us
didn't.
doing
It
these
was,
type of episodes is because you couldn't take notes.
well, no, because I said at the start of this episode that one of the things I wanted to discuss was the similarity and differences between the siblings' spouses that they marry, and then you brought up the
Oh
interesting
yeah,
dynamic
I
between
missed that part.
and then you brought up the interesting dynamic between Simon and Gareth, and actually, out of all the siblings who married into the Bridgerton family, I would say that those two are the most alike because they came from
Yeah.
really, really similar traumatic backgrounds where both of
Hmm.
them were quite like. So Gareth was also incredibly handsome, and no one knew about their family's financial difficulties. So he was still like super sought out on the marriage mart, but everyone kind of knew that he was a player. So sort of a little bit like how Colin is played out in part one of the season, and
Well, and truthfully, Sophie and Lucy would be kind of similar too,
yeah.
considering they were not like they were.
But this is a sisters episode, so we're talking boy spouses here.
I mean, I just thought about that because you said like
Yeah, yeah.
they're similar, but
But
those two are also kind of similar,
mm,
kind of similar backgrounds in the fact that they're not gentry, like they're gentry adjacent.
yes, yeah. Whereas, well, no, Lucy wasn't gentry adjacent. It was her uncle that had the title, but only because of the fact that her brother wasn't of age to be running the household yet. He actually was, but the uncle was holding on to it on behalf of him, being like, "Oh, you go do your thing, and I'll take care of this over here, and I swear I'll take care of you
Mm-hmm.
guys, and it'll all be
Which
fine."
meant
But
Lucy
he
was
wasn't.
not living a life she could have lived. Yes, she was going to a private school, basically. She was getting an
Yeah,
education.
yeah.
She was going to a private school, but she wasn't treated the same as other people.
That's
She was
because
not
the
treated on the
uncle,
same
yeah.
level. She wasn't necessarily, quote unquote, marriageable
Mm,
because her father was not controlling the money.
yes.
So she didn't have, that's where I say she's gentry adjacent because she's living the life. And like Sophie was in the life, but she was a servant. She should have been getting it, but she wasn't. Lucy
Hmm.
was in the life, but she wasn't able to live the entire experience.
Hmm. Yeah, I can see that part. But yeah, like looking at Simon and Gareth is they both had incredibly abusive fathers who constantly
Hmm.
put their title and their responsibilities above ever being fathers. And obviously, granted, we find out later on that, as I said, Gareth's father wasn't actually his father; it was uncle. Big spoilers there. Apologies if you did not watch this. But
Mm.
because of that relationship, he was absolutely awful to Gareth, and Gareth grew up with a lot of daddy issues because of that fact. And then we've obviously got Simon, who was in a very similar boat with his dad, except his dad was actually his dad, but he was still ashamed of him because he thought that he was special needs when he wasn't. And, you know, he. And I'm never ever going to excuse his dad's reasoning, but when I look at it from a perspective of, that's because I'm looking at it from a privileged white woman's perspective in the 2025 region, but in the 1800s region where black people were still very much slaves in a lot of areas, and to go from that kind of lifestyle to being like, yes, he was already, a lot of those families were already wealthy in their own right, so they were not slaves, but still when they know
But
exactly
still
how.
looked at as lesser being.
Yes, they know that they have to fight for their place in whatever society will even allow them into. And I know that obviously this is fantasy, so it's not realistic that there wouldn't have been. I mean, even whites, wouldn't necessarily allow them in for a very long time because they weren't elite. They don't say it was because they were black per se. They weren't part of the ton. But we know what the real reason was. So I do
Yeah,
understand
and why their
from.
name was Whites.
Yes. So I do understand from that perspective of the pressure that he was under. But in saying that again, Simon isn't looking at it from a black person point of view. He's looking at it from a hurt child point of view. He
Hmm.
doesn't care what his dad had to go through. He doesn't have empathy because he was never shown empathy. He can only see it as his dad expected perfection. He was not perfection, and therefore he did not love him. And that is what I can't forgive of his father. But I can also see the side of his father's of having to fight for every single inch that he had made into
Well,
society.
and that's what I love about, and this is going to be a spoiler. It's an epilogue spoiler, and I hope this scene maybe makes it into a future epilogue because I found this to be like, for me, it solidified Colin and Penn as being like the it couple of the Bridgertons. Like they're
Hmm.
the best parents, they're the best couple. Because Simon went through that, like his father thought he could not introduce him to society because of his speech impediment, and thinking that he was addled or simple, or verbiage they would have used back then.
Yeah.
To in I think it was the second epilogue. So Julia Quinn wrote epilogues when she first wrote the books, and then later she wrote
Yeah.
second epilogues.
Yeah.
So my audiobooks have second epilogues.
Yes, mine too.
And the second epilogue to Colin and Penn's book is their third child, I think, or fourth, maybe but it's one of the latter children is still nonverbal at a time that they should
Yes.
have
Yes.
developed speech.
Yes.
And they come to Daphne because they want to talk to Simon, and if Simon would talk about his experience so that they can
I
gain some insight
completely
on
forgot about that.
how they could help their child, because they come in with, we want to help our child, we love our child, we want our child to have the best life. And that whole dynamic is like perfectly Penn, perfectly Colin. Like he's lounging on the couch, he's eating, he's pretty much ready to take a nap, and Penelope's like basically smacking his leg, like, come on, we're here for something important.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's one of my favorite scenes, and it's the very very last because it's the second epilogue. But and I think that he went through so much hardship, and this kind of plays into my experience and a lot of things I've been going through the last few days, that sometimes we go through something hard because our experience is intended to help somebody else.
Well, I mean,
And
look at
I
Stephen.
think that
Like Stephen went through speech and language therapy, and now Ezra is going down that path as well, because I'm sure our listeners can hear that despite the fact that my son is 4 years old, like he does speak with a speech impediment, which because my husband's one is a muscular tongue issue, it's not as easy kind of as just him growing out of it. It's not the kind of thing that he will just naturally necessarily grow out of it. Will take a lot of strengthening of the muscles, and speech and language therapy will help that, or occupational
Right.
therapy is more so.
Right. And I think that, in lieu of it, back then they didn't have that.
Yes.
So the fact that, Simon went through all of that hardship and stuff with his father, and he went so much work to be able to speak eloquently for the title he was to inherit.
Well, and most of the time
Like,
back
I think
then.
that makes that moment so sweet. And it just solidifies, like, Penn and Colin are great parents. They want what's best for their kids. And the Bridgertons always, no matter how long down the line it is, because this is something like 10 years after they get married
And
or
I think
something
it
like
was
that,
somewhat
12 years,
healing for Simon as well, to have parents, to see
come to
parents
him.
come to him, and from a non-shaming, we would like to do the best for our child. Do you have any advice for us? Not our
Yeah.
child. They never made it seem like there was anything wrong with their child,
Right.
which is the way that it should be. There's nothing wrong with Ezra. He just needs a little
He
bit of
just needs
strengthening,
extra help.
a little bit
Yeah.
of extra
Little extra
support.
help.
Yeah. And that's the way that it should be. You should never ever make children feel deficit in any way. That we all have
I
our
mean,
little,
any human being, we all have our strengths and we all have
yeah.
the things we need a little extra help.
Yeah. Or as I would say to kids, they'd say, oh, such and such says I'm dumb because I can't do this. And I said, not yet. I said, but the more we practice it, the
Yeah.
better we get it. And I said, and there are things that you're really good at that they're not really good at. But if they practiced, maybe they'd get better as well. I said, there's always going to be things that someone else is better than us at. But the thing is there's always going to be things that we're better than others at as
Mm-hmm.
well. And I said, that's what makes us all interesting, is we all have different strengths and weaknesses. But the main thing is not yet. I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I'm practicing it. I'm giving it a try. I'm persevering. And I said, that goes a long way in this life.
Yeah, rather than cutting yourself off, saying I'm learning, I'm repairing, I'm, redesigning, whatever terms you want to
It's
use for
called
something you're trying
it's
to
called
change.
growth mindset.
It's better than saying, like, I suck at this, so I need to this. Or, a lot of what I've learned on my journey is cannot heal to fix. If you are thinking you're lacking something, then, spiritual healing, traditional healing is not going to, you have to come from a place of enough. You have to forgive yourself and realize you are where you're supposed to be. You're in perfect timing, and allow yourself that chance to heal. Allow yourself that chance to learn, relearn, because there's a lot of things that I have to relearn, because I lived an experience for several years that was not healthy, not normal. So there's a lot of things I got to.
Speaking of learning as you go, let's talk a little bit about Francesca then, because we're talking about spouses. Obviously, she starts out with John, and because, yes, we have met Michaela, but we don't know about her yet. So I'm going to personally stick at this moment until we get more Michaela and we can form ideas based on her TV character. Until then, I think we'll probably stick with, if Patty, that you're in agreement about that. When we talk about the books, we're obviously going to talk about Michael. When we're talking about the TV series, when we get Michaela, more so than just a snippet, we'll talk about Michaela. But talking
right, like we talk about show Colin and book Colin.
Yes,
they're two different
very,
characters
and
as well.
Benedict wildly different. Yes, so Francesca obviously starts out married to John, who is a very quiet, very reserved. But the funny thing is as we were talking about, every talker needs a quiet friend. John is not a talker, but he's definitely the exuberant, kind of outgoing one. What shall I say, wicked one. And
John?
no, sorry, Michael. Michael's the wicked one. I'm saying John's the quiet one. Michael's definitely the outgoing to his
That's
quiet.
why they're so close, even though they're cousin or whatever, because that dynamic. Yeah,
they were essentially raised as brothers, though not as cousins. And I have cousins who are like that with me as well. I have Alexia and Caitlin, who are my two closest cousins. They were two of my bridesmaids at my wedding. Alexia is only a year and a half younger than me, and we saw each other probably twice a week for my whole childhood until I hit 14 and a half and moved here. But we still talk all the time. And especially when we both had our kids, we would be on FaceTime with each other for like a few hours a week. And the entire FaceTime call was literally just don't like that, don't put that there. It was just basically us wrangling our children whilst on FaceTime with each other. Yeah, but we're opposites, but like siblings, And I think that's why
Mm-hmm.
John and Francesca and Michael, how their dynamic works until, and it would have been really, really interesting to see how it would have played out for Michael had John not died. And I think that's where a lot of Michael pain comes from, is I would have never gotten the girl if my cousin hadn't have died. So no matter what path it would have been on, it would have been some sort of misery. Do I lose the girl or do
Well,
I lose my brother?
and also, if he would have gotten the girl, he would have hurt
Yes.
cousin, his brother.
I don't
Maybe
that
not
I don't
necessarily
think that
lost him,
Francesca
but he would have hurt him.
I don't think Francesca would have ever gone there had John been alive, because he was, I think she did love him the entire time. I think she didn't acknowledge it as anything more than familial love. And it wasn't
Yeah.
until after John had passed that she acknowledged how deeply attracted that she was to him. But like, to be fair, even by today's standards, some of the conversations that they had would have been questionable to be having between a man and a woman, friends, cousins, or not.
Well, and I think the reason Francesca didn't really question it and that she was able to say it was familial is because she had such a big family
Yes.
and they had so many conversations.
Yes.
And book Francesca was far more conversational. She wasn't
Yeah.
as isolated as they
Yes.
made show Francesca. So book Francesca was a little more enmeshed in her
Well,
family
even
and would
Ruby
have been a part of those
Stokes,
cheeky conversations.
original Francesca
Yeah.
was, I think, a little bit more snappy than second Francesca.
Oh yeah, like teasing Colin when he came home
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Like something, I think something really happened between when she went to see Winnie then and then when she came back for her season.
Yeah.
Like,
Drama.
yeah.
Oh.
I think she was starting to have an awakening and that's why she didn't care who she married because she didn't think she would love a man.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I still hope that I don't know how I feel about.
I mean, they sent it's kind of like every TV show in existence that had a sibling or had a recast and the second actor that comes in just plays it different or they write it different because they don't want you to think about the
Dumbledore.
original actor. Yeah, Dumbledore back on Fresh Prince, the Aunt Viv changed. Family Matters, they wrote out an entire child. A child existed, the child no longer existed. Like
it's going to be
no.
on that note, we might be getting a different Simon, which would be really interesting. And obviously we've got Alfie from Emily in Paris, that is like the front runner for replacing him. But I honestly really, really want, as I was saying an hour ago, I really, really want Daphne to return for Hyacinth's season, because I just like, I know Kate can fill that role, but I just think that it should be done by Daphne, to be honest.
You just reminded me of a Bridgerton news, kind of. I don't remember who wrote it. It was an article. It was like
you speak, I'll try to type.
Try and find it. It was an article like on BuzzFeed or something where somebody wrote an opinion on they can end Bridgerton after season 6. Do not need Hyacinth Gregory. And that those actors, apparently their contracts, the way their contracts read, they probably will not be the actors for their seasons if they do continue their season. They're intended to be children.
Screen Rant.
Yeah. I knew it was something like BuzzFeed.
It's time Bridgerton fans admit these two siblings don't deserve their own season. That's
they
wild.
Deserve a season. They deserve a season.
Yeah.
I can see where there's, and here's my thing, because it's Screen Rant, I almost feel like maybe, how Shonda like takes on shows and takes on dynamics that she is interested in.
Bridgerton doesn't need to adapt Gregory or Hyacinth books.
Yeah. I think this might be, a lot of times your stuff that gets out there is kind of planted by the production company, or, that's how Hollywood works. Like stuff that gets out there, it's usually like leaked out in a way that gets us thinking about it, so then when it happens it's not that big of a deal, or they can gauge fans' reactions without it coming directly from them. I think that Penelope was her female of choice, and I think that by the time Gregory and Hyacinth are ready to marry, Penelope's going to be way into her mama years and not as Downy. And so the dopamine is gone for Shonda. I think she never planned on going beyond.
Tell me that you are a basic watcher without telling me that you're a basic watcher. It says, neither Gregory or Hyacinth is a fully fleshed out character in Netflix's Bridgerton. They haven't had any meaningful arcs in the show's first 3 seasons, and they likely won't have significant presences in season 4 either. Well, that's funny because they've specifically said that Hyacinth will be a bigger and Gregory that they're going to be getting a lot more screen time in season 4. What do
Well,
you
Gregory's
mean?
going to get less screen time because he's going to be
He's going to
off
be
at
away.
school.
Yeah, but
But
we already know Hyacinth
Hyacinth,
is going to be.
Hyacinth has had an arc. Her season 3 was huge. She is jumping at the bit to be part of society. She is so excited to be part of the drawing room. Like you can just see it. Like, and
Huh.
she's
So most fans who haven't read Julia Quinn's books likely don't care too much about Gregory or Hyacinth heading into season 4. However, they care enough about Benedict, Eloise, and Francesca to see their respective love stories play out. Oh my God, I want to throw my phone. You simpleton.
Francesca did not become a big deal till season 3.
3.
No offense to Ruby, but she
Hyacinth
was
is my
a
favorite
complete
character.
side because she was a child alongside Hyacinth and Gregory
Yeah.
and only got lines because they needed Francesca Bridgerton to say something.
Hmm.
Like she came in and was able to take a character that had barely been seen, barely had a fleshed out character, and created a character
Yeah.
that we could love.
Yes.
So they're telling me that they
How
can't
about we
write Hyacinth
use
and
how about
Gregory
we
the
use
same
the
way.
term favorably tolerate?
I'm gonna say she's barely tolerable and she in this whole story does not tempt me. Okay. I'm
No.
gonna pull out some Darcy on
Like
their
if you
asses.
were to say, hey, like let's pretend for a second that Hyacinth is of age. Do you want Francesca's story or do you want Hyacinth's story? It would be Hyacinth. Is that partially because John is going to die and it's going to break my heart? Partially.
Yes.
I'm going to cry and I like to avoid, like I've gotten to a point in my life where I don't watch horror stories anymore. I don't really do thrillers anymore. I don't do anything that I know. I do not do sad dog movies. I do not do things that specifically make me sad because I am all
Dog's
about,
purpose killed
oh,
me,
I
broke
refused.
me.
I
I
absolutely
died three
refused.
times. I
No,
died 3 times during that movie. It's
could,
awful.
could not, should not, would
It's
not.
super, oh, it's so
Nope,
good,
nope, nope,
but it's
nope,
so
nope.
sucked. It's like,
Yeah,
and it's a whole reason, like when I watch Nicholas Sparks stuff,
yeah,
Nicholas
don't know.
Sparks stuff is so
No,
good because it's so
no,
romance,
I
but it's
choose
so
happiness.
traumatic.
I choose
Nights in
happiness.
Rodanthe killed me
Mm.
also. Like, but A Dog's Purpose, oh my good
Yeah,
God.
I don't
Like,
do sad
oh,
movies. I haven't watched Hachi. I did Molly and Me, and that was no thanks. So
Hachi was actually really good.
yeah, so I mean I've seen the statue, but in Japan in
I won't
Shibuya.
even watch John Wick 1. My ex wanted me to watch it so bad that he quit watching things and wouldn't let me watch things I wanted to watch because he wanted me to watch John Wick and I couldn't watch these shows with him without him. So he stopped wanting to watch them. So my shows, I couldn't watch my own shows because he wasn't watching them until I watched John Wick. So I just started watching them when he was sleeping. So I refused to watch John Wick. And plus, he told me that John Wick goes all bananas because his dog died and they kill his dog. And like, no, I am not watching violence on a dog.
Mm-mm.
Not on your life. Will not
American
watch it.
Psycho also hurt a dog and a cat, and I was like, I'm not here for that life. But no, so Francesca, I'm deeply sorry, but your story will not be my favorite because it's going to break my heart. And I am a happiness seeker. I am sunshine.
Mm-hmm.
Give me the
Well, and I
sunshine.
hope, and I think there's a little bit of sadness tinged in Eloise's story. But I wanted to
Yes,
say this too
trauma, trauma
when
more
you were
so than
talking about
sadness.
Bridget, well, he's got trauma. And I think that says something though, because I think in 2025, I think every single human being has experienced some form of trauma in their life.
Mm.
We are not emotionally mature, emotionally healthy
Well,
people, most of us. I think that somebody, even emotionally healthy people, they may not have traumatized someone, but they've experienced trauma at the hands of another emotionally unhealthy. So I think
oh,
most of us have experienced, and
I
plus with
had,
all the wars and all the conflicts and all the shootings and all the, I mean, every person in America for sure has experienced trauma, and a lot of other countries have had some very, so we've all experienced some kind of,
yeah. So
all of us.
that
And I'm
kind of
not
brings
downplaying trauma. Everybody's got trauma. And that's why you should be empathetic to everyone. You don't know what they're going.
And that kind of brings me on to because we've talked about all the other siblings now, and their
Well, I
partners,
want to point
except for
out
Sir Philip
something.
Crane.
I know. And that's, can I say this first?
Hmm.
Because we were talking about how Simon and
Gareth.
Gareth were the same. I think that Philip Crane is very similar to John and Michael together.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Philip starts out quiet.
Quiet, and then turns into the heathen.
Yeah, he's very quiet. On paper, he's like this, quiet dude into his plants, like special interest, like he's just this regular old dude.
And then
Eloise
he's
is
like,
gonna
let
have
me
a
punish
quiet
you.
life. And then he shuts the door and says, "You want to know if we're gonna be compatible? We're gonna figure this out right now." And then
Hmm.
bam, he turns into Michael all of a sudden. Like, so we do have bookended sibling.
Okay, no, okay, yeah. So Philip Crane, he's a very interesting character in the level of character development that he goes through with Eloise. And what I think is interesting about that is I think, and this is the reason why, had Violet had anything to do with their getting together, she would have 100% pushed Sir Philip and really approved of that matching, because as her other sibling, as her other daughters needed maybe pulling out of their shells a little bit, Eloise needed to be put back into her shell. Like, chill out in the shell a
Yeah,
little
she
bit.
definitely needed a man who could rein her in.
She
And
needed
I
a
think
balance.
and I think when we look at the book, when we look at Sir Philip Crane at first, he seemed timid.
Hmm.
It's not the word I really want to
Reserved,
use.
reserved.
Reserved. He's reserved. I mean, he is a little timid.
I don't think he's. I don't
and
think.
I think
I don't think it's
and I
timid,
think
because I
that
think he has it all there. It's just that he holds so much in because he's afraid of ever letting anger out and being like his dad. So he holds so much of what he's feeling in, because feelings equal danger. You let your feelings out and they come all out at once, and that's not a safe space for him. So I think it was more Roma that was keeping him a bit
Mhm.
more quiet. And then
and
Eloise
it's
comes along, and she is like such an absolute whirlwind. She's a tornado in his entire life,
she's
and
a
he's
trigger.
she is, but sometimes, as I said,
What are we
sometimes
having
getting
this
into
conversation right
relationships,
now?
like as I was saying, we were talking off screen earlier, is sometimes getting into relationships is actually incredibly triggering. We talk about the honeymoon phase, but actually, like for me personally, getting into a new relationship with Stephen was awful. Like I loved it and it was fantastic, but it also meant that I had to now work through a lot of the baggage that I had, because a new person comes along and
Mhm.
you've got to figure out, hey, are they gonna put me down in the same ways? Are we gonna fit? Are we gonna be able to find
Mhm.
a medium ground between us? And in doing so, Philip and Eloise both had to address a lot of the traumas that they had.
Yeah, yeah, I very much think that she triggered him a lot.
Hmm.
Um,
And the funny thing
for
is you
her, I,
you
I,
and
I
I are
don't
both
think she.
Eloise. You and I are both Eloises,
Oh
and
my God, are we ever?
we both have our Sir Phillips.
We are Eloise. I know, and you're just talking about this all out in the open and everything. Um, the whole time I'm like, what are you doing? No, she very much triggers him. And this is something that, I've been learning recently on my journey, is that romantic relationships are special. It's like one of the only true relationships. I mean, we kind of get it in friendships and we kind of get it in siblings or acquaintances or whatever, but it really occurs in romantic relationships, because you're attempting to get closer to a human being than you've been with anyone else. And so a lot of times the person you're attracted to is somebody that mirrors back your own insecurities and your own issues back to you.
Hmm.
Like, the way they act or whatever, you're attracted to them because they have something you're missing, something you feel like you're missing. You might not actually be missing it, but you feel like you are. So they mirror that back. But over time, because it's something that you need or you want in your life, you feel like you can't achieve it or whatever, that it starts evoking like negative energy in yourself, because you want to match that, you want to rise up to meet that. But a lot of us go through that period of time of feeling like we can't. So we you end up having this not good enough or too much kind of mindset, depending on which side of that dynamic you're
Hmm.
on. And I think that Eloise and Philip are very much that. She feels too much. He feels inadequate and not enough. But what's beautiful about, and the fact that it's their book and Eloise is such a reader, is that thank you for agreeing, whoever you were back there, Stephen
um,
or dad or whomever.
my 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 dad just cleaned out the S trap in our bathroom.
I just heard, yeah.
Talk about
thank you for
trauma.
thank
I
you for
have
agreeing with me.
to answer your question from before, yes, I have definitely traumatized someone, and our listeners just heard it. My hair is
um
thick.
Greek. It's Greek. Um
Oh, sorry, Dad.
So I think that what's beautiful about Eloise's book and their story is that, and they wrote to each other, and that plays into it, is the fact that they both come together because the cover, and I'm not talking looks here, I'm talking the persona that
you
they
deleted
created.
my outro.
Did I?
You did.
Oops.
Oh no.
I told you ADHD is ADHD today. Just
okay.
Can I just, I mean, I've already said it, so let me just hit reverse. It should let me. Hold on. And this is what we go through. Pandemonium Patty has struck again.
I was like, hey, wait a minute, where's my stuff?
So Patty's ADHD is unmedicated and it's at its peak right now. Is anything happening? We now no longer can say no outros have been destroyed in the making of this podcast. We now have to put a 1 and start our days over. Like OSHA in America. This workplace has had no incidents in this many days. Like we can't say that anymore. This work, I officially destroyed the outro. So I think that they both came into the relationship thinking that they were, they were compatible, but they believed they were compatible and that it would be an easy life for the both of them because they both had their traumas. They both had their issues and they wanted the easiest way out. Like Eloise did not want to get married, but she knew she had to get married. So she felt like this would be the easiest way for her. He would leave her alone. He'd be off doing his plants, whatever. And she'd have an easy, quiet life. And she, like the life Marina currently has, even though she has 2 kids, is the life Eloise thought she was going to have. And then Philip thought he was getting this intelligent, but they both put their they definitely were in the honeymoon phase. They both put their best foot forward. They hid the parts of themselves, the shadows, the things they felt like were unlovable about themselves. And then they get into the same space and then they start mirroring these traumas. Like Eloise is so reckless and she's so impulsive and she's so opinionated and she's so all the thing that like he's getting so angry and he's so afraid of being angry, especially anger, that although I think in most romantic relationships too, isn't like every emotion like wrapped up in some form of anger, like you're just constantly, and that could be like I've not had, but I'm going to say one safe relationship, and I have not witnessed too many healthy relationships. So it just seems like everybody's always mad at each other somehow. But I think a lot of times like other emotions, when people are not emotionally mature.
When horrible husbands eat your Pringles on snack day.
On snack day. Do not touch the Pringles on podcast day. How dare you, Stephen?
It was a betrayal of the
She had to eat soda crackers. All
right. I think we're going to wrap up because I do need to get back.
Okay. I just want to. I want to finish this though. Sorry. Like I think that they both mirror insecurities on each other. But that's how you know a true relationship is going to work out, because they work together. They find a common ground. They work with each other to heal each other and communicate those insecurities and create the systems and the supports they need in place with each other.
And they balance each other. Yeah. So I actually really, really like their relationship.
Don't judge a book by its cover kind of theme to their story. Like they went for the cover and found out this isn't a romance. Yeah. This is more like an adventure thriller.
Yes. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed our sibling dynamic episode. Next week we'll be doing the crossover siblings, as in our Anthony, Daphne, Colin and Eloise and Benedict, Hyacinth, Gregory and their siblings, and their dynamic as well. So for today, gentle listeners, we will leave it there and continue on next week's episode. If you have anything in particular you would like us to cover, or any Bridgerton knowledge you would like to share, please head to our Facebook page, The Ladies Bridgerton. And if you're enjoying our podcast, please remember to click follow on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you are listening. We are now over on YouTube, and we dropped a wonderful breakdown of our favorite to non-favorite, or what we think best to non-best mamas last week. So please head over there for content exclusive.
The mamas thing, I'm still editing that. I'm editing it tonight to post tomorrow. So,
by the time this comes out, it'll be there.
Yeah. It'll be there. Yeah.
Hopefully. If not, look back
Hey,
in a few days.
I've done pretty well keeping up editing.
Yeah.
Dare you?
I was 30 minutes like getting my son to bed last night because I was up editing.
So really, I'm just so disappointed in you calling me out. I'm doing just fine.
I'm sorry.
We have content on YouTube.
I forgot to say that it's not actually. I was thinking I edited the podcast yesterday and therefore it was out, but it's not out. It was me who edited the pod, not. Yeah, my brain just forgot that we're doing two separate things.
You're adding to my plate.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So once again, thank you for listening to the musings of two mad women.
Women,
sister friends. Two mad sister friends.
Yours truly, Tash the Kiwi
and Lady Patty.